Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Today I'm creating a summertime scrapbook page for Bramble Fox using a mix of perspectives, including the endless summer title from the July Fox box. I'm going to be recording some memories of the first time we spent the day with our soon-to-be son-in-law. I will be using that endless summer title from the July Fox box, along with some book plates and these arrows. I've also grabbed this sweet little camera and some paper snips that I want to add to the page. These photos have quite a bit of blue in them and some pine trees in the background. I've chosen a background paper that is a simple light blue ledger, and I'm going to be adding some torn paper to the page with some plaid pattern peeking out behind it. This pine cone pattern with the soft blue in the background matches the blue colors I chose for the page, and it brings in a little bit more of that mountain theme to the layout. At first I was going to add this pattern to the top and bottom of the page, but it felt like it was a bit too much. So I ended up adding a plaid strip to the top, which matches the pattern peeking out behind the pine cones at the base of the page. I do want to add a little bit of color behind the photos, so I'm marking the space with a pencil, and I'm going to prep this with a little bit of clear gesso before I add some watercolor. I have really watered down this blue-green pigment, and I'm applying it with a wider paintbrush so that I can get more of a flowy look. I want more color on the edges and less in the center so that I can create a bit of a frame around all of my elements. I'm also going to be adding some splatter on the page. Now, I did get a little heavy-handed with this, but I think it's going to work out just fine. Before I adhere the two patterns in place, I want to curl up the edges of that pine cone paper. This page needs a little bit of texture, and having that at the base of the page is going to create a nice grounding strip. Now, I'm going to go off camera and add a little bit of stitching to this layout, and then I'll come back and add the embellishments to the page. On this layout, I added some stitching across the top and the bottom, and now I'm going to place my photos onto the page using some foam tape. I chose a little die cut with a sentiment that says, "Enjoy this beautiful life together," which is how we felt when we started to realize that this boy was the perfect match for our daughter. On the day these photos were taken, our daughter asked if we could take a day trip to the mountains and invite her boyfriend along. At the time, he lived about 3 hours away, and other than a few holidays, we really hadn't had a chance to spend a lot of time with him. On this day, we had the opportunity to watch the two of them together and how he interacted with our daughter and our youngest son. We realized how much he cared for our daughter and that he would be a good fit for the family. In a year, we will have the pleasure of calling him our son when he marries our daughter. So I have added some florals to the page, and I've tucked some pine sprigs behind them. Now I'm playing with that book plate and trying to decide how to incorporate it. I cut out the word family from the paper snips, and I want to back it with some patterned paper. I'm going to trace the book plate and cut out that plaid pattern by hand. Once this is on the page, it's going to form a nice visual triangle between all three of those sage green plaid patterns. I felt like the flowers behind this book plate also needed to stick out above it, but that die cut was a little too short, so I ended up cutting it so that I could have some of the florals showing above. That book plate is going to hide that blank space where I cut the die cut apart. In the summertime, our mountains are filled with wildflowers, so I wanted to add those to the page. I have cut the pine sprigs from two colors of cardstock to give a little variation behind the florals. The mix of cardstock and printed die cuts gives a nice contrast to the page. On that left floral bundle, there was a really bright orange flower, and it wasn't quite fitting with the layout. So I ended up placing a lighter blue colored flower over the top to soften that element a little bit. Now, I really wanted to use that word family on the page, but right now it's just kind of floating inside that book plate. So I ended up moving it to the side of one of the photos and made it look like a little tab. Inside the book plate, I ended up putting the words happy heart. This longer phrase with the heart shape fits much better inside the book plate, and the two typeset phrases are going to create a nice visual triangle with the typed journaling I'm going to add to this layout. Now at this point, I started fussing around with the arrows and that little camera. I liked how they created a nice triangle around the photos, but something felt off. So I decided to take a break from it and work on a few other elements. I added a gray butterfly to bring some dimension on that side of the page and to help connect the sentiment card to the florals. On the book plate, I added some white twine. I tied a knot on one side and left a tail of thread. On the other side, I looped the thread through the hole and used some double-sided tape to secure it on the back. At this point, I have decided that I like two of the arrow placements, so I'm going to leave them there. I don't think that fun little camera is going to work on this page because it's taking up too much of my journaling space. But I have another project that this camera is going to work perfectly for, so I'm going to save it for that. I printed my journaling onto some cardstock and adhered it in place under the photos. I have added a bright dragonfly over those florals on the left, and I added some more pine die cuts to help draw your eye to the journaling. I also tucked a tiny little arrow down there to point towards the words that I wrote. Now I'm just going to add a few peach colored dots to the page. This helps bring some of that peach color from the flowers to other areas of the layout. All right, let's take a look at the completed page. This layout tells the story of when we took a trip to the mountains, so I incorporated some elements like pine cone paper, wildflowers, and insects. I wanted to create a page with phrases and words that helped tell the story of the photo. I chose the endless summer title, a few phrases from the page snips, and that sentiment with the florals. I tied everything together with the pine die cuts, arrows, and peach dots. I'm going to share some close-up photos of this layout so that you can see all the lovely elements on the page. The photos on this page bring back some great memories, and all of the elements speak to the time we spent in the mountains getting to know someone who would soon become part of our family. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope that this project gave you some inspiration for using that July Foxbox title and a few other elements that you might have in your collection. If you are not a subscriber of the Bramble Foxbox, I have put a link in the description below so that you can learn more about this subscription. If you would like to see more of my projects, you can visit my channel or follow Miss Carrie's Creations online. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.